गुड इवनिंग टू ऑल ऑफ यू. हेलो. आ गई आवाज. To extract money out of consolidated fund of India, we require the approval of appropriation bill, but certain expenses are charged, जो constitutional bodies हैं, उसके लिए we don't require appropriation bill to be passed. We can extract that amount from CFI even without approval of appropriation bill. So charged and voted.
अगर सर उनकी सैलरीज चेंज करनी है तब तो करना पड़ेगा.
क्या चीज?
अगर सैलरीज उनकी चेंज करनी है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बॉडी
तो उनका अलग रूल्स रेगुलेशंस है, उसके लिए आपको अप्रोप्रिएशन बिल का पर्पस क्या है? टू एक्सट्रैक्ट मनी आउट ऑफ दिस. अगर उनको सैलरी देनी है, यू डोंट रिक्वायर अप्रोप्रिएशन बिल टू बी पास्ड. फिर से हाँ, टोटल का भाई आप 1 महीने 2 महीने करते हो, 4 महीने करते हो, तो 1/6 1/4 ऐसे ही करोगे ना, प्रोपोर्शनल ही कर.
बजट प्रेजेंट फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर करते हैं तो उनसे वो जो एस्टिमेट होता है तो वो सारा मिनिस्ट्रीज का पहले डेटा ले लेगा फिर करते हैं.
ऑफ कोर्स.
और जो डिमांड फॉर ग्रांट जो होता है बाद में, तो उसमें
अप्रूवल बाद में होता है, बट वो सारा कुछ फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर के पास इट वाज अवेलेबल बिफोर द बजट इज प्रेजेंटेड ना. वो सारा डिमांड फॉर ग्रांट. हाँ हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स.
तो सर डिमांड ऑफ ग्रांट में भी तो सर सेम केस होता है.
वही चीज होता है. तो ये चीज डिमांड फॉर ग्रांट की इन्फॉर्मेशन आती कहाँ है? द मिनिस्ट्रीज गिव, प्रोवाइड, एंड ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर डिसाइड्स. अप्रूवल बाद में होता है, बट कितना किस मिनिस्ट्री का कितना डिमांड है, दैट फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री हैज द डेटा ऑन 1 Feb ना. हाँ, वो सब भी तो प्रेजेंट होता है ना पार्लियामेंट में. वो इन्फॉर्मेशन मिनिस्ट्री से आती है, बट मिनिस्टर ऑफ फाइनेंस प्रेजेंट्स दैट डॉक्यूमेंट डिमांड फॉर ग्रांट ऑन 1 Feb. उस पर डिस्कशन एंड वोटिंग एडजर्नमेंट के बाद फिर से इन द हाउसेज मीट तब होती.
और एडजर्नमेंट पीरियड में कमिटीज क्या करती हैं सर? यही.
और आप जो कल एब्सेंट थे उसमें आपने क्या किया? तो क्लास के बाद पूछ लेना, नो डाउट. ठीक. बजट. So your constitution says that budget should be broken into 2 parts. ठीक. That means whatever we are totally spending and receiving money, na? So there is some total expenditure, there is some total receipts. So your constitution says that what is your total expenditure? That expenditure should be broken into 2 parts. Revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, and receipts should also be broken into 2 parts, revenue receipts and capital receipts. So we break budget into 2 parts, revenue budget and capital budget. And then revenue budget is broken into ठीक है. So generally in objective the questions are asked that they will write certain expenditure or receipts, and then they will ask that whether it is revenue or capital in nature. Now how to distinguish between, see, Government of India has some assets and some liabilities. Like all the roads which the government of India is owning, national highways, ports, airports, that is government of India's assets. PSUs, government of India's assets. And all the loans which government of India has taken, that is its liabilities. So at any moment of time, government of India is having some assets and liabilities. Now when government of India spends money, so by spending money, it can construct road. By spending money, it can create some other asset. So when government of India spends money, it creates assets, right? So when government of India spends money, assets will increase. And by spending money, government can repay the previous loans. By spending money, government can repay the previous loans. So by spending, liabilities will decrease. Clear? ठीक है. So when government spends, you know that by spending money, government creates assets, or by spending money, government reduces its past previous liabilities. So when government is spending money and either assets are increasing or liabilities are reducing, then we call capital expenditure. And if government is spending money and neither assets are increasing nor liabilities are reducing, then it is revenue expenditure. For example, government spend money to construct road. Where it will come? Capital expenditure. Why? Assets increased. Government spent money on PM Kisan. Revenue expenditure. Because government spent money, neither assets is going to increase in case of PM Kisan, neither liabilities are going to reduce. कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर नहीं समझ में आया भाई. व्हेन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया स्पेंड्स मनी, बाय स्पेंडिंग मनी इट कैन क्रिएट एसेट्स, इट कैन बिल्ड रोड, रेलवे, एयरपोर्ट, सो एसेट्स इंक्रीजेस. और बाय स्पेंडिंग मनी इट कैन रीपे द प्रीवियस लोन्स, सो इट कैन रिड्यूस द लायबिलिटीज. So when government is spending money and either assets are increasing or liabilities are reducing, then capital expenditure. And if government is spending and none of these things are happening, then revenue expenditure. When government sells its assets, it will get money. So government gets money when it sells assets. That means when assets will reduce, when government's assets will reduce, it will get the money. Or when liabilities will increase, if government will take loan, liabilities will increase and government will get the money. So if government is getting the money and either assets are increasing or liabilities, if government is getting the money and either assets are reducing or liabilities are increasing, so capital receipts. And if government is receiving money and none of these things are happening, then revenue receipts. For example, government collected tax. Now when government is collecting tax, is it assets decreasing? No. Liabilities increasing? No. So revenue receipts. Government sold one of its PSU, disinvestment. Government is receiving money and assets are decreasing? Yes, decreasing. You write capital expenditure. तो डिपेंड करता है ना कि कौन सी स्कीम है. डिपेंड. पीएम किसान में नो. मनरेगा में सर्टेन एक्सपेंसेस आर कैपिटल नेचर. दैट इज राइट. मनरेगा में कुछ क्रिएट भी तो होता है ना. मनरेगा में एसेट्स क्रिएट होते हैं. कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, दोज एक्सपेंसेस ऑफ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, दोज expenses of government of India which either increases the assets which either increases the assets, in bracket you write physical or financial both, physical or financial both. ठीक है, those expenses of government of India which either increases the assets or reduces the liabilities, or reduces the liabilities are called capital expenditure. एग्जाम्पल्स अभी हम लोग डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे, ठीक है. नाउ यू राइट रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर. रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर, those expenses of government of India, those expenses of government of India which neither, those expenses of government of India which neither क्या होगा, which neither increases the assets, those expenses of government of India which neither increases the assets, those expenses of government of India which neither increases the assets nor decreases the liabilities, those expenses of government of India which neither increases the assets nor decreases the liabilities are called revenue expenditure. ठीक है. प्रीमियम लायबिलिटी अभी आते हैं, आप अभी डाउट पूछना अभी. देन यू राइट कैपिटल रिसीप्ट्स. कैपिटल रिसीप्ट्स, सी कैपिटल, इधर देखो आप, कैपिटल रिसीप्ट्स दैट मींस गवर्नमेंट इज गेटिंग द मनी. नाउ गवर्नमेंट इज गेटिंग द मनी, इट कैन गेट द मनी बाय सेलिंग द एसेट्स, रिड्यूसिंग द एसेट्स और इंक्रीजिंग द लायबिलिटीज. Capital receipts, those receipts of government of India, those receipts of government of India which either, those receipts of government of India which either decreases the assets, which either decreases the assets, in bracket physical or financial both. Those receipts of government of India which either decreases the assets or increases the liabilities, or increases the liabilities are called capital receipts, are called capital receipts. Then you write revenue receipts. Will come. Revenue receipts, those receipts of government of India, those receipts of government of India which neither, those receipts of government of India which neither decreases the assets, which neither decreases the assets nor increases the, which neither decreases the assets nor increases the liabilities are called revenue receipts. ठीक है. Now capital expenditure का example, infra construction or capital expenditure,
repayment of loans, total loss,
giving new loan, repayment of previous loan, principal amount, repayment of previous loan. Capital receipts, disinvestment, right? So when government is selling its PSUs, assets are decreasing. So capital receipts. Both should not happen, na? Either. When government is selling its PSUs, government's asset is decreasing or liability is increasing? Asset is decreasing. Or है ना in the definition, either assets decreases or liabilities increases. If any one thing is ठीक है. So disinvestment दोनों नहीं होगा, ठीक है. और है so this capital receipts, disinvestment and और कोई क्यों डोमेस्टिक नहीं? New loan taken by government. New loan taken by government. Getting. So disinvestment, new loan taken back. Recovery of loan. ठीक है, right? Recovery of loan is capital receipts. Government had earlier given loan and now government is getting that amount back. So it is receipt. Government earlier gave loan and now it is getting that money back. So government is receiving money. Capital or revenue receipt? Capital receipt. Why? What is happening? When government is getting its loan back, what is happening? Assets or liability are changing? Which asset decreased? That loan paper. See, when government gave loan, government is spending money and assets getting created, 1000 loan paper got created. When government gets its loan amount back, this 1000 loan paper is now no more, so assets get reduced. Good question. See, when government is constructing road, where it will come? Capital expenditure. Government is constructing. So when government is constructing road, what is happening? Assets are increasing. So when government is constructing road, assets is increasing. So government is paying money. So you can always say that when government is paying money to construct road, its money is decreasing, so asset is decreasing also. Government constructing a road, asset is increasing or decreasing? Increasing. Road is getting. But he is saying that government is constructing road, government is making payment. So from wherever it is making payment, that assets is decreasing. Physical or financial could be. See, try to understand. In this way, every transaction will have two ends. My question is, government is constructing road. So road is getting created, asset is getting created. Asset is getting created. From where government is giving this money, making the payment, that is not the question. Question just asks that government is constructing road, so road asset is being created. From where government is making this payment, that is not at all this question. Otherwise, so every transaction will have some other. So if I ask you, government borrowed money and constructed road. So two transactions. Government borrowed money, capital receipts. Government constructing road, capital expenditure. But if I ask you, government constructing road, so capital expenditure, from where government got that money, that is not at all the question. You have to just look at this part. Government constructing road, road is getting created. From where government is doing this thing, you don't need to worry about it. ठीक है? Revenue expenditure, tax, expenditure as salary, pension, subsidy, interest payment. Why loan to state? Loan, if government is giving loan, it is capital expenditure. Government giving grants. Revenue receipts, tax, fees and fine. Interest received, dividend from PSUs, government gave loan. So government gave loan. What government got? 1,000. If government is giving 1,000 crore loan, government got a loan paper. So that 1,000 crore loan paper, that is the asset, financial asset. इसीलिए मैंने लिखा है आप, either physical or financial. When government is constructing road or government is giving loan, in both the cases government is spending money. In one case it is creating physical asset road, in the other case it is creating a financial asset loan paper. ठीक है, और इसमें कोई डाउट? किसी को डाउट है तो पूछ लो. That is dividend, yes. Fiscal policy. What is the meaning of the word fiscal? Fiscal? सोचो. Fiscal meaning related to government's expenditure and receipts. So fiscal policy, understood? It is the policy through which government adjusts its expenditure and receipts. It is the policy through which government adjusts its expenditure and receipts. Receipts के आगे in bracket tax. It is the policy through which government adjusts its expenditure and tax to influence the economy. It is the policy through which government adjusts its expenditure and receipts to influence the economy to achieve the following objectives. So in monetary policy we read 4 tools, है ना? We read 4 tools: open market operation, repo rate, CRR, SLR, stabilize. Here what are the tools? 2 tools. Expenditure and receipts are the 2 tools. ठीक है? So there we read 4 tools, here we have 2 tools. So by using these 2 tools, government can follow a expansionary fiscal policy or contractionary. You studied monetary policy, expansionary or contractionary. The fiscal policy is also expansionary or contractionary. So here again we have 2 policies, expansionary and contractionary. 2 types of fiscal policy. In monetary policy we had expansionary policy and contractionary policy. So in case of monetary policy to follow expansionary policy, we are increasing the repo rate or reducing the repo rate? Reducing the repo. In case of expansionary fiscal policy, there are two tools: tax and expenditure, receipts and expenditures. Receipts mainly it is tax. So expansionary mein RBI government is trying to expand the money supply, expand the demand in the economy. So to expand the demand, tax should be reduced and expenditure should be increased. Contractionally, RBI government is trying to contract the demand in the economy, increase the tax and reduce the expenditure. So in the last 4-5 years, government is following which fiscal policy? इसका एप्लीकेशन भी तो आप देखो कि कैसे हो रहा है. इन द लास्ट 4-5 years, since last 4-5 years, government is following contractionary fiscal policy. True or false? False है. False है. Government is trying to spend a lot. Government has spent a lot to boost the economy. When the economy is at boom, then government may follow contraction. Generally, when the economy is slowed down, government follow this policy. And when economy is at boom, government follow this policy generally. So economic growth was slowing down, so government is following this policy. Government is following this policy. So last 4-5 years, this BJP government has increased the expenditure. Government expenditure has increased. Taxes to a certain extent has reduced to a certain extent. ठीक है? So this generally is followed in case of recession or slow growth, and this is followed in case of boom. There is another classification of fiscal. One is contractionary and expansionary. Other way of classifying fiscal policy is counter and pro-cyclical. Counter and pro. Counter cyclical and pro-cyclical. So two types of fiscal policy. This is another way of classification. Now boom and देखो, counter means oppose करना, pro means support, cyclical. This cyclical means it is talking about which cycle? Business cycle. ठीक है, इधर फोकस करो आप. If the economic cycle is in boom, if the economic cycle is in boom and government through its fiscal policy is trying to counter it. So how can government counter the boom? By expenditure should be increased or reduced? If recession and government is trying to counter it, आप लोगों को सब पता ही. Pro cyclical, government is supporting the boom. The recession and government is supporting that recession. कैसे होगा? पैसा ही नहीं है. पैसा ही नहीं है. If there is recession and government doesn't have money, Greece में slow down था, still government increase the tax rates, reduce the expenditure. Boom में है economy, but election आ गया. कौन सा? Government increases the expenditure. So it may happen in certain cases. क्या वो नहीं आ रहा समझ में? नहीं, कॉन्सेंट्रेट नहीं किए होगे तभी ऐसा हो सकता है. क्या नहीं समझे? जब हम यहाँ बोलते हैं बोर्ड पे देखो तो बोर्ड पे देखा करो। क्लियर? आपका कोई डाउट था? हमने बोला बाद में पूछना। कुछ डाउट था आपका? Generally, we calculate three kinds of deficits. Deficit means when expenditure is more than receipt. So, revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit. So, Government of India calculates these three deficits. अब आप थोड़ा ध्यान से सुन लो, ठीक है? Revenue deficit means revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipts. Revenue expenditure is more than revenue. So, revenue expenditure is also called day-to-day expenditure. ठीक है? Revenue expenditure means day-to-day expenditure. So, if government is having revenue deficit, so expenses are more than receipts. So, revenue deficit, it is said to be bad. It is said to be bad. Why? See, suppose I am earning 1 lakh rupees every month and then I am spending into rent, movies, shopping, restaurant, and I am borrowing 10,000 rupees because I am not able to meet my expenditure in 1 lakh. So, I borrowed 10,000 rupees. So, I spent total 1,10,000 on rent, movies, shopping and blah blah. Now, this 10,000 rupees which I am borrowing, how will I repay? No way of repayment because all these expenditure are not going to give me return in future. So, when anyone spends more on revenue front, then it needs to borrow, and that borrowing it won't be able to repay because the revenue expenses don't give much return in future. That is why it is generally considered to be bad. Revenue deficit is bad for the economy, for you also. Okay. Now we studied two types of budget, revenue budget and capital budget. So one we calculate revenue deficit, but we don't calculate capital deficit. We don't calculate capital deficit. So we calculate revenue deficit. Concentrate करके सुनते हैं ना, आपको क्वेश्चन आंसर करना है, ठीक है ना, ये नहीं कि सुने नहीं. So we have revenue budget, capital budget. We calculate revenue deficit. We don't calculate capital deficit. We calculate overall deficit. So one is revenue deficit and then total deficit. Total deficit means fiscal deficit. That means combined revenue and capital both. That means combined revenue and capital both. So fiscal deficit is equal to basically total expenditure minus total. So revenue expenditure minus revenue deficit, and this is total deficit, you can say fiscal deficit. अभी लिखो नहीं, there is some error here. What is the error? किसी को नहीं पता? हाँ? Plus borrowing, minus borrowing. Why minus borrowing? That will be? This is not the logic. Plus borrowing. Why? नहीं ये लॉजिक एकदम गलत
We
लॉजिक।
have to meet our expenses, so that's why we have to borrow from somewhere, like bonds.
अरे आप लोग लाइफ को क्यों कॉम्प्लिकेट करते हो भाई? नो फिर से आप लोग भी वेंचर करना चाहेंगे? ठीक, देखो आंसर गलत हो या सही हो, कभी भी अपने लॉजिक के साथ खिलवाड़ नहीं करना, ठीक है? लॉजिक को रहने दो, क्यों लॉजिक को इधर उधर करने लगते हो? कहीं कुछ देखे और सब मतलब इधर का उधर, जैसे था ना वो दैट जीडीपी इक्वल टू सी प्लस आई प्लस जी प्लस एक्स माइनस, अब कहीं आपने माइनस एन देखा, उसी को किसी तरीके से घुसाने की कोशिश करने लगते हो, लॉजिक को उल्टा पुल्टा करके। दैट वी शुड नेवर ट्राई टू डू इट। दिस इज परफेक्टली फाइन, टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर माइनस टोटल रिसीव्स, ठीक है? बट द प्रॉब्लम इज, ध्यान से देखो इधर, our total expenditure is for the next year is 27 point, चलो थैंक गॉड ये तो याद हुआ, 27.8 lakh crore. Our receipts is, देखो देख के बताओ, ट्वेंटी पॉइंट समथिंग होगा, देखो 20 पॉइंट समथिंग होगा, हाँ 20 पॉइंट समथिंग होगा, लाओ मैं बताता हूँ क्या है। $20.80 इधर देखो अभी आप, so for the next year 1920, this is our total expenditure, this is our total receipts, right? Now how much we will have to borrow? 7.04 we will have to borrow. So we borrowed 7.04 lakh crore. Now this we borrowed, ये किस ईयर का हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? 1920. So 1920 में this is expenditure, this is receipt. So in 1920 we will have to borrow this, and this borrowing is again a receipt. This borrowing is a receipt or not for the government? Yes. Which receipt? Capital receipts. So total receipt becomes, this is total receipt, because borrowing is also a receipt, na? Right? So this formula will always give the answer 0. This formula will always give 0. Because whatever you will borrow, whatever is the shortfall that you will borrow, that borrow is also a kind of receipt. So total receipt will always be equal to this. So this will always be 0. Acha, what is the borrowing here? 7.04. Why we borrowed 7.04? Because this was the deficit, this was the shortfall. This was the shortfall, that's why we borrowed. So our deficit is 7.04. So how we will get 7.04? If we do total expenditure minus total receipts, if we write except borrowing, that means 27.84 minus 20.80. ये लॉजिक होता है, आप लोग देखे रहे हो कहीं कहीं उसको जस्टिफाई करने की कोशिश कर रहे थे, ठीक है? समझ गए हो? this will also be equal to, this will also be equal to total borrowing. अभी आप समझोगे, अभी आप 100% नहीं समझोगे. एक क्वेश्चन देंगे, गलत करोगे फिर समझ जाओ. टोटल बोरोइंग हो गया. और दिस टोटल, रुक जाओ, लिखने के लिए आपको इतनी जल्दी मची हुई है. बुक हम दिए लिख के ना, हमारा बुक लिखने का कोई भी इंटरेस्ट नहीं था, सही बता दें. लिटरली लिखने का मेरा कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं था, हमने केवल आपके लिए लिखा है. तो 2 मिनट समझ लो फिर लिख लेना. लिखने लगते हो इसलिए आप लोग कुछ कुछ चीजें मिस कर देते हो. ठीक है. टोटल बोरोइंग. नाउ टोटल बोरोइंग, so government borrows from internal sources and external sources. We discussed yesterday internal debt, external debt. So internal borrowing and external borrowing. Now government's internal borrowing is again divided into 2 parts: government borrowing from the market and government borrowing from RBI. We just segregate the RBI borrowing. So internal borrowing plus external. Internal borrowing again broken into 2 parts: domestic market borrowing plus borrowing from RBI. ये हो जाएगा, right? From here we can also write total expenditure is revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus revenue received plus capital received except borrowing. So revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts, revenue deficit plus capital expenditure minus receipts except borrowing. (1920) what is the target that we are trying? 3.4%. This year and 3%. यही है ना टारगेट? क्या लिखा हुआ देख चेक कर लेना एक बार. ठीक है. अच्छा, नाउ दिस इधर कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके देखो. वी आर ट्राइंग 3.4% ऑफ व्हाट? ऑफ जीडीपी. नॉमिनल या रियल? सोच लेना. ठीक है. 3.4% ऑफ व्हाट? नॉमिनल जीडीपी, रियल जीडीपी? नॉमिनल. तो 3.4% ऑफ नॉमिनल जीडीपी कैलकुलेट करके बताओ, जल्दी करो. नॉमिनल जीडीपी कितना इस साल का? हाँ, लाख करोड़. 210 कैसे आया? कितना से इंक्रीज किए? 6.4 और 7. नहीं सुधरोगे आप लोग. ये रियल जीडीपी, नॉमिनल जीडीपी? ये नॉमिनल. तो नॉमिनल टू नॉमिनल कितना ग्रोथ चल रहा है? नॉमिनल ग्रोथ 11.5%. तो सो नॉमिनल जीडीपी है तो इट विल कम बाय इंक्रीजिंग फ्रॉम 11.5%। ये खुद से एक बार करके देखोगे तो याद रहेगा, लेकिन कभी आप लोग देखते नहीं हो। 3.4% ऑफ, ये कैलकुलेट करके बताओ, लाख करोड़
6.3
कर लो, नहीं आएगा 6.3 करो। ट्वेंटी 1 इंटू 3.4 कर दो, कितना आया? हाँ, अरे हंस करो भाई, कैलकुलेट कितना आया? अरे आप लोग महान हो, 3.4% ऑफ 210 करते क्यों नहीं हो? अभी हमने 7.04 बोरोइंग देखा था ना बजट डॉक्यूमेंट में, दिस शुड कम दिस मच, यही तो डेफिसिट है। अप्रोक्सीमेटली इतना आ रहा हो, अप्रोक्सीमेटली 7.1, नहीं समझे? 3.4% of nominal GDP 210 lakh crore, it should be the equal to fiscal deficit of next year। fiscal deficit of next year का डेटा अभी हमने लिया था ना, 27.84 minus 20.04, तो यार 20 हाँ, तो पूरा बजट तो प्रोजेक्टेड ही है। हाँ, 4 है, 3.4 दिस ईयर। आप कहना क्या चाह रहे हो? हाल में प्रोजेक्टेड कितना है? 3.4%, 3.4% है। आप क्या कहना चाह रहे हो कि ये सब, ये देखो, ये प्रोजेक्टेड है ना, ये तो पूरा बजट जब आप पढ़ रहे हो तो बजट प्रोजेक्टेड ही तो सब कुछ चल रहा है ना, बजट तो सारा कुछ प्रोजेक्टेड पे हम लोग चल रहे हैं। 27.84 ये प्रोजेक्टेड है, दिस सब कुछ प्रोजेक्टेड ही है। ठीक है, अब लिख लिए, लिख लो। समझने में पेशेंस रखना चाहिए, ज्यादा टाइम लगाना चाहिए, और लिखना फास्ट होना चाहिए। हाँ, जल्दी से नोट करो ये। एंड आई थिंक बाई 21 वी आर ट्राइंग टू मेक इट 0। किसके पास है वो डॉक्यूमेंट? दिखाओ जरा, उसमें लिखा हुआ है कि किस साल तक? आई थिंक वो नहीं लिखा है। नहीं नहीं, 25 तक नहीं, वो 21 तक टारगेट है। ये लो, this we are directly trying to bring it to 0, 3%। ठीक है, वो जो आप 2025 का टारगेट बता रहा हो, दैट इज डेट टू जीडीपी का टारगेट है। ये तो इसी साल का है, मतलब 2021 का। एक आप इधर बैठे हो, एक वो इधर बैठे। बताइए बताइए, दिल में नहीं रखिए, बता दीजिए। So now fiscal deficit, so revenue deficit we just discussed, it's bad, ठीक है। What you can say about fiscal deficit? What you can say about fiscal deficit? Now next year fiscal deficit we are targeting 3.4%. Next year fiscal deficit we are targeting 3.4%. Now this fiscal deficit may happen because of higher revenue deficit, right? Or it may happen because of higher capital expenditure. This may happen because of higher revenue expenditure, or this may happen because of higher capital expenditure. If the fiscal deficit is because of higher revenue deficit, then it is bad. But if fiscal deficit is because of higher capital expenditure, then it can again be good or bad. So now you are getting that if fiscal deficit is because of revenue deficit, bad. If it is because of higher capital expenditure, then we need to know in which case it is good and in which case it is bad. For example, you know that most of the companies in this world has huge debt on their balance sheet. सबके पास debt, huge debt पड़ा हुआ, almost major companies. So why all these companies have borrowed a lot of money? देखो what happens, आप समझो ऐसे, इधर बोर्ड पे देखो आप, what happens, what I'm trying to explain is why most of the companies have taken huge debt. Now 5 years back I left my company, ठीक है, 5 years back I left my company with 1 crore rupees of money, ठीक है, एग्जाम्पल है, सही में नहीं था. I left with some savings, now may not be exactly 1 crore. I left my job with 1 crore rupees money. Now this 1 crore I could have put into FD, fixed deposit, and I could have earned 10%. At that time the interest rate was 9 to 10%. So I could have put 1 crore money at FD 10% or minimum 9%. 9% means 9 lakh annually, or 9 lakh annually means 75,000 monthly. और अगर अपना घर है, बाकी चीजें सेट हैं, तो जिंदगी कट ही जाएगी, नहीं? May not be in Delhi, but किसी tier 2, tier 3 city में आराम से चल जाएगा. विलेज में तो मोदी 2000 में ही चला दे रहे हैं. But what I am saying is कि I could have done FD at 9%, 10% and I could have relaxed. But rather than doing that, I put this money into business because my expected return, I was expecting more return. So in bank FD, the return was 9%. 9% of what? 1 crore. So if I could have put this money into bank, I could have got 9 lakh every year. But rather than doing that, this I put into business expecting 20%. So I expected 20% of this every year in my business. That means this money will get multiplied at the rate of 20% every year. ठीक है. Now so first case में I didn't borrow anything from the bank, I put my savings and ठीक. Second case, suppose I borrow from banks, let's say 11%, 12%, I borrow. So now my business is worth this 3 crore, this is the business. Now my business return is giving me 20%. So I will put more money here. Now this because my business model gives me 20% return. So this is the business, this I have put into my business. So now this gets multiplied every year at 20%. ये logic समझ रहे हो आप? My business is now big, but this is multiplied by 20%. I borrowed 2 crore if the cost of borrowing is 12%. Is 12% means lending rate, and my business is giving me 20% return, it is always justified that I should borrow. Because now this will get multiplied at 20%, in this case only this person. So in which case I will be able to generate more wealth, this case. So by this logic, the logic is if the business return is more than the cost of borrowing, you should always borrow. You should always borrow. On this logic, every company has borrowed, almost every company. They borrow a lot because they think that their business will give them more return as compared to the cost of borrowing. Now why governments borrow? Governments also borrow in this logic only. Governments also borrow on this logic only. So if government is borrowing at 10% and government is spending money, if the return is more than the cost of borrowing. Now for government, how government calculates its return? Because when government borrowed and government is spent into Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, how government will calculate the return? How government will calculate the return? So if government is borrowing money and spending into various schemes, capital expenditure, so economy will expand fast, economic growth will be more. If government will spend more into capital expenditure, economy will expand more. If economy will expand more, tax collection will be more. And if with that increased tax collection, if government is able to repay those borrowings, then it is justified. क्या problem? ठीक है? So if government is borrowing and spending into capital expenditure, if the economic expansion is happening, government's resources is increasing and government is able to repay those borrowings, then it is justified. But if government is borrowing money and giving you subsidies whose return is less, then economy may not be able to expand that much, economic growth may not be high, government's revenues will not be high and government will not be able to repay those borrowings and government's debt will keep on increasing. So government's borrowing is justified if government is spending into qualitative capital expenditure which can expand the economy fast. Right? Us case mein justified, because in that case the economic return, the total return which the government gets. So government doesn't calculate return on every social project or schemes. Overall economic growth is high. So government's tax collection resources will also be high and government will be able to repay. Then we say that it is justified. In that case it will be justified. But so I said that if you are spending into capital expenditure it is good, but whatever you are spending in capital expenditure there should be a limit. ऐसा नहीं होना कि you borrowed 10 crore shares में लगा दिए, share डूबा और आप भी डूब गए, ठीक है? And then you say कि अरे सर मैंने तो capital expenditure में लगाया था shares. Everything should have a limit and that limit should be put in terms of your income, your size. Now government has also put that even if it is spending into capital expenditure, government has limited that it will keep its borrowing to 3% of economic size GDP. Now why 3%, why not 3.5% is subjective argument. Some countries have kept it at 3.5%. Some may be keeping at 2.5%. So 3% we think that it's appropriate. Government should not borrow more than this. Okay. So even if government is spending a lot on capital expenditure, it is justified only if the economic return, the economic growth is high and government is able to repay those borrowings, then it is justified. If government is spending for capital expenditure and not quality expenditure is happening, corruption is happening, economic growth is not increasing, then it is not justified. Plus, it should be limited to 3%, which we have put for our country. And from the first class, we are trying to increase the size of the burger, or the size of the consumption. From the first class, we are trying to increase consumption. That means increasing the per capita income, becoming rich. Now there are two cases. First case, government is not borrowing at all. Right? Government is not borrowing at all. Then there will be a certain level of economic growth. Then there will be a certain point of time when our per capita will increase to a certain level and we will say that we have become rich. So when government is not borrowing, in certain time frame we will become rich. But if government is borrowing money and is spending into capital expenditure, economic growth will be fast and we will be able to become rich fast. And that's what we are trying to do. So if any country wants to become rich fast and wants to increase per capita income, standard of living, then it must also borrow, because a country borrowing and a country not borrowing, a country who is borrowing and is spending qualitatively, it will be able to increase the standard of living of its people in a much faster way.
And so that country who is borrowing has more chances to get bankrupt also.
फिर से वही बात I said that if government is borrowing and spending into quality expenditure, If it will spend into various subsidies or corruption, other things, then economic expansion will not happen. Government won't be able to repay its debt. Debt will keep on increasing, and ultimately it will be declared bankrupt, default. So, किस logic पे government borrows? You understand, to increase your standard of living, because if government will borrow, economic growth will happen fast. You will be able to become rich fast. अब जिसको जो डाउट है पूछ सकता है. Case, if government will double the printing of currency, inflation will increase, prices will increase, your consumption may remain same. Printing output, money supply doubled, inflation will increase. That will not increase your welfare. Welfare means consumption level, quantity. Right, true. हाँ, ये तो हम बोल रहे हैं, आप क्या बोलना चाह रहे हो? I am saying कि government is spending qualitatively, मतलब of course positive quality, मतलब if I am saying qualitatively, of course it means कि अब adjective में adjective नहीं लगाओ, quality capital expenditure. When government spends money in the economy, it checks that कि where there is more requirement of road or highways. ना ऐसे ही कहीं उठा के थोड़ी बना देंगे. If government will just print money, it will increase inflation. If government prints money, government don't need to pay. That unaccounted money enters into the system. When government borrows money, it will have to spend qualitatively, because government knows that if it is borrowing, ध्यान सुनना. He asked a valid question. When government, suppose government asks RBI that you print money and give it to us, and then government spends. So print money and give it to us, that means government don't need to repay, it's government's money only. It creates inflation. But when government borrows money, it knows that it has to repay. It will spend into quality expenditure, economic size will increase, government's resources will increase, and that much money it will take it out and repay. When earlier government used to ask RBI print, तो print करके spend कर दिए. जब देना हुआ, it again asked again कि you print, and then that same money gave. So this way, unaccounted money used to enter into the system.
That's why demonetized.
ठीक है? Now our total expenditure is 27.84 lakh crore next year का. Do you know that कि out of this 27.84 lakh crore, what is our interest payment? So 27.84 lakh crore is the total expenditure. Or if interest payment is around 5.56 lakh crore. ठीक है? देखो आप समझो, this year fiscal deficit is 7.04 lakh crore, fiscal deficit. Now this fiscal deficit is stock or flow? डिसाइड करके एक आंसर बताओ. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू थिंक फ्लो है एंड हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू थिंक स्टॉक है? ये तो पूरा इक्वली डिवाइडेड हो आप लोग भाई. रिपीट करें? लास्ट क्लास तक जाएगा क्या स्टॉक एंड फ्लो? ये दिस स्पेसिफिक थिंग आई हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड इन द लास्ट 5 years कि मुझे समझाने नहीं आता है, आप समझ नहीं पाते हो लिटरली इसमें। मैं समझ रहा हूं कि आप मन में क्या कह रहे हो, ठीक है। फिस्कल डेफिसिट मीन्स और बोरोइंग at a moment or for a period of time. We are borrowing 7.04 lakh crore in 1920, right? Flow है 1920 में तो our total borrowing is ये 7.04 lakh, our total expenditure is 27. तो जो 27.84 है lakh crore, it is a stock concept or flow concept? Flow है, 1 year में we are spending. Since government is borrowing every year, its debt stock is increasing every year by the amount of fiscal deficit. We had some debt stock. We had some debt stock around 82 lakh crore. ऐसे मत देखो है in government of India debt stock 82 lakh crore था. Now this year government borrowed 7.04 lakh crore. So debt stock is increasing every year. Debt is a stock. Since every year we are borrowing, debt stock is increasing. And interest payment, we need to make interest payment on fiscal deficit or on debt stock. हाँ? एक क्वेश्चन नहीं समझ में आया, आंसर नहीं समझ भाई। गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया हैज डेट। आप लोग कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके सुनते हो ना? रीपे पूरा नहीं करती ना। गवर्नमेंट हैज डेट ऑफ 8.82 lakh crore. गवर्नमेंट borrowed something. Government borrowed, so its debt stock is increasing every year. Its debt stock is increasing every year, and in any particular year, government is making payment on its previous debt stock. So, in 1920, government is making interest payment 82 lakh crore debt stock tha. In this year, government paid interest payment around 5.5 lakh crore, and government borrowed this. वो सब बात की क्वेश्चन है. So, government of India's debt stock is increasing, but if we are able to repay those debt and our economy is expanding, no need to worry about. My previous company debt stock 80,000 crore. Mast tha chairman. Why? This, whatever is the debt stock, we are able to generate revenues and we are able to repay those things. So this year our borrowing is this, interest payment around 5.5 lakh crore. So if Rahul Gandhi says to Mr. Modi that your fiscal deficit is very high, 7.04 lakh crore, then Mr. Modi will say that you borrowed a lot in the last 10 years, and that's why we need to pay interest payment 5.5 lakh crore approximately. If we will not have to make interest payment, then we need to borrow very less. Fiscal deficit minus interest payment is primary deficit. So whatever is the fiscal deficit, this is the fiscal deficit. If we remove the interest payment part, our deficit is very less, around 1.2 lakh crore, 1.5 lakh. So total deficit, fiscal deficit excluding interest payment, socho interest payment is primary deficit. Is primary deficit.
Fiscal deficit is like 7 lakh crore, and still our economists and many of the like scholars said that still we are getting 2% of GDP for health and 3% of GDP for this and that. So if we expand those expenses, so we have to borrow more.
Right.
We have to pay more.
We have to borrow more, or we may reduce some of our expenses.
So is it?
Actually, we will not borrow more. We are reducing our borrowing in terms of percentage. We will reduce some of our wasteful expenditure. We are trying to reduce some of our wasteful expenditure. For example, you will be discussing in subsidies that what expenditure we have reduced. We removed subsidies on we removed subsidy on diesel. We are trying to move towards DBT to reduce wasteful expenditure on LPG, जो leakage and all this. वो हम लोग डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे. Right.
So we clear the debt stock of 2018 and 19 of 5.5 lakh. So year on year, the government clears makes the debt stock zero.
No. Whatever we are making repayment, more we are borrowing, so our debt stock is increasing. See, every year we are borrowing also, and every year we are making repayment also on our previous debt. But every year our borrowing is more than the interest payment. So our debt stock is further increasing in absolute terms. But in percentage terms, we are trying to reduce it. और उसका graph I think I have given in the new edition. And QEP program में भी हमने उसका booklet होगा तो.
So here the net effective debt stock is like almost 1.5 lakhs.
Net effective debt. Our debt stock is around 82 lakh crore.
That is total, sir, for that which has been amounted due to the borrowing of 7.04 lakhs.
Our debt stock till last financial year was 82 lakh crore. Now for this year accounting, we'll have to adjust how much it will increase. Last year data it was 82 lakh crore. हाँ. Right.
External borrow और inflation बढ़ गया है हमारी country में.
हाँ.
Debit
क्या बोले एक्सटर्नल बोरोइंग किया? एक्सटर्नल बोरोइंग डॉलर में होगा. इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ गया सो. बोलो
हमें रिपेमेंट करने के लिए हमेशा ज्यादा रकम देनी पड़ेगी ना, इंटरेस्ट के हिसाब से डे बाय डे इंटरेस्ट.
Why?
इंटरेस्ट रेट कौन सा रहेगा?
Interest rate उनके if you are borrowing from external sources, the interest rate will be as per the international markets.
कैसे रिव्यू किया जाता है कि एक ही बार किया वो लोन? इंटरेस्ट रेट कैसे डिसाइड किया जाता है?
अरे वहाँ जो मार्केट है में जो इंटरेस्ट रेट होगा ना, यूएस में सपोज यू आर बोरोइंग फ्रॉम यूएस, इंटरेस्ट रेट इज 3%, so you will be able to get at 3% dollar, and while repaying we will have to make repayment in dollar. आपके क्वेश्चन को मैं करेक्ट करता हूँ and then I will answer your question. He is asking, government borrowed in dollars, ठीक है, and then it converted into rupee and spent here. Inflation यहाँ बढ़ गया, suppose बढ़ता है inflation. Who will lose? That country or that country will lose or not? सुन लो मेरी बात. Valid question आप ढंग से पूछ नहीं पाए. That's why I am correcting it. Government of India borrowed from abroad. It is spent here. बाद में inflation बढ़ता है and we are repaying. Who will be at loss? That country will be at loss or not? Huh? That country will be at loss or not? Why they will not be at loss? Why they will not be at loss? Exchange rate. See here, ध्यान सुनो, एक सेकेंड. Government borrowed at this rate. ध्यान सुनना, इसका हमने कॉन्सेप्ट बताया था. Government borrowed at this rate. Suppose government borrowed $1 billion. Converted at this rate. ठीक है. Converted at this rate. Suppose government borrowed at 3%. Government abroad borrowed at 3%. So government converted into rupees 70 billion. Now it has to pay 3% on this. if inflation in India will increase, then if inflation in India will increase, this will depreciate, and government while paying dollars will have to convert more rupees to get the same amount of dollar. समझ गए? मसाला वांस को भी हटा दो, just normal borrowing हमने किया. Don't. Did you get this? So if government borrowed and spent here, inflation will increase, rupee will depreciate, or government will be paying much more money. Government will be basically converting much more rupee to get the same dollar. कहानी खत्म हो गई. आप सोचो लॉस किसको होगा? गवर्नमेंट को. गवर्नमेंट विल हैव टू पे मोर मनी. इंक्रीज होता जाएगा, डजंट मैटर इन टर्म्स ऑफ परसेंटेज, इट शुड रिमेन कांस्टेंट. If last year I borrowed something, my debt stock is increasing, doesn't matter. If my income is increasing and I am able to repay that thing, in terms of percentage, everything should be calculated in terms of percentage. So if that percentage is constant, doesn't matter.
सर एक्सटर्नल बोरिंग में सर उस कंट्री के इन्फ्लेशन को देने वाले से क्रेडिटर्स काउंट भी तो करते होंगे. एक्सटर्नल बोरिंग्स आर वेरी लेस. सर
हो गया.
नो आई एम आस्किंग व्हाट इज.
मुझे पता है आप लोग पूछ रहे हो. मुझे समझ में आ रहा है कि आपको इंटरेस्टिंग लग रहा है. पढ़ लो, आई विल क्लैरिफाई द क्वेश्चंस. चलो लास्ट 3 क्वेश्चंस. हाँ, किसको क्वेश्चन है? ये तो हमने कल बताया था. आप कल आए थे, नहीं आए थे? परसों आए थे? नरसों आए थे? हमने लास्ट 2 डेज में आई टोल्ड यू ना कि इन्फ्लेशन होगा तो दिस रूपी विल डेप्रिसिएट, या नहीं बताया था? मैंने बताया 2 दिन पहले ना. हमने बताया था एग्जाम्पल. आप क्लास के बाद मिलना हमसे. इसी देखो, सी 1 सेकंड. टुडे इज सैटरडे, फ्राइडे. इसमें भी कंफ्यूजन है. टुडे इज सैटरडे. हमारी क्लास हुई है थर्सडे, फ्राइडे एंड दिस सैटरडे. थर्सडे को वी डिस्कस दिस कॉन्सेप्ट कि if in India inflation increases, that means rupee is losing value, and if rupee is losing value, that means you will have to pay more rupees to get the same amount of dollar. If rupee lost value, why they will be willing to accept 70 rupees and they will give you $1? They will not be willing to accept, because rupee lost value, they will demand more rupees. Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Fiscal responsibility means responsibility related to. अच्छी बात है कि आप लोग सोच रहे हो, और सोचो. We'll resolve this doubt after the class. ठीक है? क्योंकि ऐसे ना कि फिर डाउट पॉपअप होते रहता है. It's good that you are thinking. सोचते रहो, लेकिन मेरा ये सजेशन है कि बस यही मत सोचो हमको देख के, क्लास के बाद भी सोचो आप. ठीक है? आप कुछ लोग हैं बस हमको देख के उनको सोचने का मन करता है. ऐसा नहीं है. आप क्लास के बाद खुद से स्ट्रेस करो दिमाग को, खुद से सोचो, डाउट नोट करो, क्लास के पहले आके पूछो. आई एम देयर. फिस्कल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एंड बजट मैनेजमेंट एक्ट. Fiscal means related to government's expenditure and receipts. Budget Management Act. Now, let us understand that in which context this act was introduced. This government, NDA government, single party government, BJP got full majority, 272 plus. इस बार का क्या विजन है? 400. So last time when there was single party government? Rajiv Gandhi 84 to 89. And after 89 we always have coalition governments. Now generally what happens in coalition governments, when there are a lot of political parties collaborating to form a government, they are not these political parties who have formed to who have collaborated to form the government at the central level, they are not at all interested ki where this fiscal deficit is slipping, what is the economic growth, they don't care. They care about how many statues being built in Lucknow, ठीक है, elephants के statue कितने बन गए or something like that, ठीक है. So when regional parties collaborate, they always look for the regional constituencies, they always look for their vote bank politics rather than where this fiscal government of India's finances are going. So generally in that, and to run the government, you will have to accept their demands regarding expenditure, whatever they demand. You will have to allocate portfolios, you will have to accept certain level of corruption also, ठीक है. So generally in coalition government, fiscal deficit increases. Generally in case of coalition government, fiscal deficit increases. And that's what started happening in India post 89. By 2000 our fiscal deficit had crossed 6%, which is quite high as per the standards. Then we enacted this act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management. So इस background में. Now there were two main objectives of this act. First, long term macro economic stability. देखो जब आप मेंस का आंसर लिखते हो ना तो उसमें if you can support your answer with a very little amount of data तो आपका आंसर काफी अच्छा हो जाता है, ठीक है. आप बहुत डेटा नहीं याद कर सकते हो, that I accept, but from every topic certain level of data you should remember. जैसे when it comes to agriculture, approximately कितना growth होता है, 2.5, 3, 3.5, तो इतना पता होना चाहिए, ठीक है. स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल फार्मर्स कितने ये पता होना चाहिए. क्या 80% ऑफ एंड टोटल सो ये देखो ये जो डेटा है ना, ये क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर इज फेसिंग अ मेजर इशू, ठीक है. एंड दिस स्मॉल एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल फार्मर्स इट हैज बिकम अ मेजर चैलेंज फॉर द गवर्नमेंट टू हाउ टू frame the policies that their condition can be improved. तो अगर ये दो तीन डेटा आपको याद है, because these are all generic data, you will be able to use this data if any kind of agriculture question comes. और ये डेटा आपको तभी याद होगा when you will calculate on your own in terms of percentage किसका कितना कैसे हुआ है. अगर आप पेन पेपर से कैलकुलेट दो तीन बार कर लोगे ना तो you will never forget. जैसे पर कैपिटा इनकम है 188 लाख crore GDP, 128 crore population, approximately 1.2, 1.3 lakh आ गया. तो ये चीज GDP, टोटल GDP ऑफ इंडिया, नॉमिनल GDP, टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर, फिस्कल डेफिसिट, ग्रोथ, नॉमिनल, ये सब डेटा आपको अब याद होना चाहिए. और इसमें याद करने में मुझे नहीं लगता कि बहुत एफर्ट लगेगा ऐसे. नाउ यू हैव ऑलरेडी अंडरस्टूड दीज थिंग्स. इन्वेस्टमेंट रेट कितना है इकोनॉमी में, 28%. So these things will help you in mains, may not be in prelims as such, but mains में बहुत help करेगा. Sometimes prelims में भी trend आता है तो उसमें. So two main objectives: long-term macroeconomic stability, and second was intergenerational equity. Long-term macroeconomic stability. If the government will be fiscally responsible, that means if government will control its expenditure and try to increase its receipts, our economy will be more stable. Because when debt increases on the government, it needs to repay that debt. Investors may not come into that country, and your economy may not be stable, or growth may not be stable. Inflation may increase. So if we want our macroeconomy to be stable, then government will have to be fiscally responsible, government will have to spend properly, government will have to increase its resources. ठीक है. Second objective, long term intergenerational equity. Equity means शेयर. यहाँ शेयर का क्या करोगे आप?
means percentage of something.
इक्वालिटी. अच्छी बात है कि आपको शेयर याद है. इक्वालिटी, इंटरजेनरेशनल इक्वालिटी. इसका मतलब ये है कि अर्लियर व्हेन आई यूज्ड टू सी अ लॉट ऑफ इंग्लिश मूवीज, ठीक, अब नहीं देखते, ठीक है, टाइम नहीं मिलता. और थोड़ा वो जो टाइम मिलता है तो इंटरटेन होने के लिए हिंदी मूवी काफ़ी है, ठीक. कभी कभी इंग्लिश मूवी में दिमाग लगाना पड़ता है. हिंदी मूवी क्या है, कभी भी शुरू करो, यू कैन ऑलवेज गेस कि क्या हुआ था क्या होगा, ठीक है. सो व्हेन आई यूज्ड टू वॉच, तो जनरली जब यूरोपियन जो मूवीज थे ना उसमें हम क्या देखते थे कि कोई भी बंदा ऐसे, कोई पेंट कर रहा है, कोई ड्राइव कर रहा है, कोई कुछ भी कर रहा है और जिंदगी चल रही बड़े आराम से, ठीक है ना. कोई कुछ भी कर रहा है, मतलब बहुत ही रिलैक्स लाइफ होती थी. और हम अपने आप को देखते थे उस समय, तो हम लोग सॉफ्टवेयर में कोडिंग किया रहे 12 घंटे, ठीक है. और हम लोग की जो कंपनी थी, पेरेंट कंपनी, फ्रेंच कंपनी थी, वहाँ पे यूरोपियंस बहुत ही रिलैक्स, थोड़ा बहुत काम किए चले गए, अपना लाइफ एंजॉय कर रहे हैं. यहाँ पे हम लोग लेबरर्स की तरह काम किए हुए हैं. तो आई यूज्ड टू थिंक कि यार चक्कर क्या, मतलब व्हाई वी आर वर्किंग सो हार्ड, और वहाँ पे लाइफ स्टाइल भी बेटर है, मतलब इट्स अ फैक्ट. आई यूज्ड टू थिंक. देन मुझे बाद में पता चला कि दैट यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, ग्रीस एंड अदर, they were giving a lot of subsidies and pensions to their people. Tax was less, they were giving a lot of subsidies and pensions and they were enjoying their life. But ये कब तक enjoyment चलेगा? So giving subsidies and pensions, less tax, so government was borrowing a lot and spending. Now that borrowing accumulated because they were doing revenue kind of expenditure, accumulated. And then at a point, certain point of time, the debt stock increased so much that government was about to default. Then it had to increase tax, because how it will repay? So it increased tax more than 50%. It reduced its pension subsidies. So what happened in Greece? Earlier generation enjoyed less tax, more subsidy, pension, and this generation is paying more tax and getting less pension. So whenever government spends a lot wasteful expenditure, then there will not be equality across generations in terms of tax rates, in terms of subsidy and pension. So we should try to balance our expenditure and receipts and tax rates such that there should be equality across generations. क्योंकि एक generations में tax कम होगा तो ultimately next generation they will have to pay that. So दो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स थे. इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर्स आप लिखते जाओ एंड आई विल कीप ऑन एक्सप्लेनिंग. इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर्स ऑफ दिस एक्ट. अच्छा, ये पास कब हुआ था? जुलाई 2004. जुलाई 2000. बजट से रिलेटेड ये मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट एक्ट है. जुलाई 2004. इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर्स ऑफ दिस एक्ट. फर्स्ट, अच्छा, दिस एक्ट सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का था, बट ऑल द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स हैव आल्सो इंप्लीमेंटेड दिस एक्ट इन देयर असेंबली. ठीक है. Important features of this act. First point, the act mandates the central government. The act mandates the central government to reduce the revenue deficit. The act mandates the central government to reduce the revenue deficit by 0.5%. The act mandates the central government to reduce the revenue deficit by 0.5% or more of GDP. The act mandates the central government to reduce the revenue deficit by 0.5% or more of GDP every year starting from 2004-05. Every year starting from 2004-05, so that it gets eliminated by 31st March 2008. So that it gets eliminated by 31st March 2008. Eliminated means zero. And why we are trying to keep it zero? We just discussed that revenue deficit is bad. ठीक है. Next, the act mandates the central government. The act mandates the central government to reduce the fiscal deficit that mandates the central government to reduce the fiscal deficit by 0.3% or more, by 0.3% or more of GDP every year, by 0.3% or more of GDP every year starting from 2004-5, so that to reduce it to 3% of GDP by 31st March 2008. ठीक है? So we tried for fiscal deficit 3%, revenue deficit 0%. Then next clause, next point, the government may breach the above targets. The government may breach the above targets in case of natural calamity, national security, or any other case if government thinks so. ठीक है? सो फर्स्ट टू में हमने बोला ये करना है, और थर्ड में first time we achieved these two targets in 31st March 2008, but then we started slipping from this target. So 2004 to 2018-19 we have achieved this target only once, 2007-8, and after that we again breached that target. Government breached that target. What reason it gave? See, उसमें लिखा हुआ है ना कि natural calamity, national security, or any other reason which government thinks so. So post 2007-8 when we breached the target, what reason government gave? Economic growth slowdown. So by that reason we have breached the target. Actually what happens? See, this 3% is not a very sacrosanct number which should be followed in every case. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. For example, there is recession. Economy is slowing down. Now there are two options with the government. Stick to this 3% target, don't borrow more and let the economy fall into slowdown or whatever is happening. Or the second case is breach this target, borrow more, spend more, pull the economy out of recession. So most of the economists say that if the economy is slowing down recession, then rather than strictly following this target, we may borrow more, spend more, and when the economy is out of recession, then we should try to meet this target. Next. Government shall not borrow from RBI. Except by way of advances. Government shall not borrow from RBI except by way of advances, in bracket ways and means advance. Ways and means advance. नाम नहीं सुना? ways, WAY, ways. इसका सिग्निफिकेंस मैं बताऊंगा. ways and means advance. Government shall not borrow from RBI except by way of advances in case cash disbursements are more than cash receipts. In case cash disbursements are more than cash receipts. इसको मैं भी एक्सप्लेन करता हूं. दूसरा पॉइंट लिख लो आप. In case cash disbursements are more than cash receipts. Next point, RBI shall not subscribe to the primary issues of central government security. RBI shall not subscribe to the primary issues of central government security. एक पॉइंट और लिखो, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट शुड लिमिट इट्स, क्या लिखा हुआ आप बताओ, दिस guarantees 0.5%. Read this statement.
Central government shall limit its guarantees that given for loans raised by
Right. Central government shall limit its guarantees. Next point. Central government shall limit its guarantees to 0.5% of GDP. Central government shall limit its guarantees to 0.5% of GDP. अभी एक पॉइंट और है, पहले इसको एक्सप्लेन करते हैं, देन आई विल टेल यू. So central government shall limit its guarantee means when state government borrows, then government gives. In certain cases, when PSUs borrows, then also government of India gives guarantees. So now guarantee is again a kind of it impacts government of India, because in case of default, government of India will have to pay. So even guarantees should be limited. How much? 0.5% of GDP. Acha, why in case of PSUs borrowing, government of India gives guarantee in certain cases? What is the benefit of that? When government of India acts as guarantor, PSU's cost of borrowing decreases. They may be able to raise the loan at a lesser rate when government of India acts as guarantor. Okay, interest rate less. हाँ, so ये जो दो स्टेटमेंट है कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया शैल नॉट बोरो फ्रॉम आरबीआई एक्सेप्ट बाय वे ऑफ एडवांसेस. सो नेक्स्ट ईयर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज बोरोइंग हाउ मच? 7.04 lakh. So this is the borrowing in 12 months, right? See here, from 1st April, government of India will start receiving money, tax money, dividend receipts, and government of India will start spending also, right? And the total difference is this, so government will have to borrow, right? So this borrowing should not happen from RBI. It has been restricted through this act that government, whatever is the shortfall, deficit, government should not borrow from RBI. But suppose 10th April ko government has to spend something and received tax another money has to come on 12th. So 2 दिन का gap. So for that 2 days, government may take advance from RBI just to meet the mismatch between disbursements and receipts for a temporary period. But total borrowing, whatever is the deficit, that government should not do from RBI. समझ गए? और जो next statement है that RBI shall not subscribe to the primary issues of central government securities. So I have already told you, I think government of India, primary dealers, and then RBI, financial institutions, banks, individuals. So primary dealers are again banks only. ठीक है? They are banks only given they have been permitted by RBI to purchase government bonds in the primary market. Earlier RBI used to directly purchase the government bonds. Now it has been restricted. Why? When when government of India wants money, it issues bonds and they pay money. When earlier it was RBI, now government wants money. Now market rate is suppose 9%. Now government used to force RBI to purchase its bonds at 2%, 4%. So government used to get cheaper money. Actually, ideally government should borrow at market rate, but this is owned by government of India. Government of India used to force RBI that give us money at 0%. And when it has to repay, then it again has to used to issue bonds. So direct linking that we removed. Now if government of India wants money and the market interest rate is 9%, if they will issue bonds at 4%, will they purchase? No. They will not purchase. So to make these transactions at market rate, any direct dealing with RBI has been eliminated. Earlier it used to. So this has been done through FRBM Act. ठीक है? Last. हाँ, आप कुछ पूछ रहे थे? हो गया? चलो. देखो RBI government cannot directly buy from RBI. It should not happen because government owns RBI. Government can always force RBI to give money at a lesser rate. ठीक है? So direct dealing of government and RBI has been removed. But when government is issuing bonds, primary dealers are purchasing. That bond RBI can always purchase. So RBI has government bonds through which it does OMO, open market operation. करती है ना? So RBI purchases government bonds, but not directly in the secondary market, not in the primary market. Direct dealing has been removed, just to ensure accountability, transparency. SLR? SLR में तो बैंक्स रखते हैं ना गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड. हाँ, so आरबीआई डायरेक्टली ना, आरबीआई नहीं इशू करती. समझो व्हाट यू आर ट्राइंग टू से कि इन दैट केस गवर्नमेंट, वो बॉन्ड किसका बॉन्ड है? वो गवर्नमेंट का बॉन्ड है. ठीक है. सो डू यू थिंक दैट द एसएलआर बॉन्ड्स व्हिच द बैंक्स आर कीपिंग, फर्स्ट आरबीआई परचेज? नॉट एट ऑल. Not at all. You kept 100 rupees in bank. Bank kept 4 rupees with RBI. Bank gave 77.75 loan, and the 19.25 rupees, with 19.25 rupees banks purchased government bonds, maybe from RBI, maybe from primary, maybe from anywhere. समझे ये चीज? So banks purchase 19.25 rupees. They will purchase government bonds from anywhere. अरे आप अलग चीज कर रहे हो और मैं अलग चीज कर रहा हूं. समझो बात आपको. That I know that it should be less. हम आरबीआई की बात कर रहे हैं, आप बैंक्स की बात कर रहे हो. Right, that is true. थोड़ा सा है accepted. और वो deliberately किया गया है, because then who will purchase that government bonds? Government wants lesser money. अरे एक्सटर्नल से इंटरेस्ट रेट लेस मिल रहा है ना. From external sources, it is getting at 2-3%. But then external debt, it creates a risk also. जैसे when companies are borrowing from abroad, ECB, there is a limit. Why there is a limit? क्योंकि you are borrowing in external debt. If something happens and we don't have the forex reserve to pay, we will be declared defaulter. Once we have enough forex reserve, then we may allow full capital account convertibility. Whatever you want to borrow, you can. और कुछ पूछ रहे थे आप? In certain cases, central government acts as guarantor. When states borrow, central government provides guarantee. When PSUs borrow, in that case also central government provides guarantee देती है. तो गारंटी है तो एक तरीके की लायबिलिटी तो है, दैट इज कॉल्ड कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटीज. वो भी एक तरीके का रिस्क है ना गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया पे. सो लायबिलिटीज आल्सो दिस एक्ट हैज लिमिटेड दैट यू शुड नॉट इंक्रीज योर कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटीज बियॉन्ड दिस 0.5% लेवल. अरे अब इसमें जो लिमिट है कि y 3%, y 0.5%, ठीक. I didn't. अरे I said कि PSU के केस में when government gives guarantee, cost of borrowing reduces because there is a guarantor. There is a guarantor as such. सब लोग अपनी जो liabilities, contingent liability accounting terms है, because it is contingent means in certain cases it may become a liability to government of India when the this PSU or something defaults. ठीक है. Last point. नहीं लास्ट पॉइंट लिख लो. Government should maintain transparency. Government should maintain transparency in fiscal operations. Government should maintain transparency in fiscal operations. It has two parts. Fiscal operations. Government should maintain transparency in fiscal operations. A, इसके दो पार्ट हैं. A, reduce secrecy in budget preparation. Reduce secrecy in budget preparation. And B, budget preparation. B, the finance minister, while presenting the budget, the finance minister while presenting the budget should announce any change in accounting standards and policies. The finance minister while presenting on the budget should announce if there is any change in accounting standards and policies. The finance minister while presenting the budget should announce if there is any change in accounting standards and policies. अब इसका मतलब ये है reduce secrecy in budget preparation, accounting standards and policies. Reduce secrecy in budget preparation means a lot of times while government is preparing the budget, they manipulate certain data. For example, last year we announced that fiscal deficit will be 3.3%. Now in this year when fiscal deficit is increasing, government may do the expenditure this year but it may roll over. जैसे this year government gave subsidies to FCI. Now that is an expenditure that will increase the fiscal deficit. But suppose finance minister don't want to show that increased figure. So FCI gave subsidy to you, but finance minister will say that he will give you in the next year. So it has already incurred cost, but it will not show in its budget. It will say that it will give you in the next year. So fiscal deficit got to do. So government should not do this kind of thing. If it is doing, then it should clearly write in the budget that our fiscal, we have been able to manage fiscal deficit 3%, 3.3% because we have rolled over our expenses from this year to that year. तो करो लेकिन बता दो. Reduce secrecy. Government करती है ऐसा, बहुत बार करती है. And government finance minister should announce any change in accounting standards and policy. इसका मतलब ये है, suppose a company made a sale on 15th March. A company made some sale of product on 15th March, but it got money, revenue on 15th April. Then in which financial year it should show that revenue in its account books? Previous or next? 15th March को sale किया, पैसा कब आया? 15th April. So in which accounting year, financial year, it should show this revenue? Previous or next one? It depends on accounting policies, accounting standards. There are certain accounting standards like called cash-based accounting, accrual-based accounting. So cash-based accounting says that when you receive the money, then you book it. Accrual-based says that when you really did the transaction, then you book it. So if government is changing the accounting policies, then it can change fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit may be high, but because of change in accounting standards, it is looking less. So whatever is the change, government should announce in the parliament. ठीक? So these are the features. और एक और इसमें recommendation है that whatever is the borrowing 7.04 lakh crore, in the first half, government should not borrow more than 45%. Means uniform borrowing होना चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि आपको अगर पेरेंट्स 30,000 देते हैं पर मंथ, फर्स्ट कोई 30,000 स्पेंड कर दिए एंड देन यू आर सेइंग योर पेरेंट्स डोंट वरी आई विल मैनेज. पेरेंट्स को पता कहाँ से मैनेज करोगे, फिर से आ जाओगे मांगने. So this 30,000 you should spend uniformly. So whatever is the fiscal deficit by first half, 30th September, government should not borrow more than 45%. Actually होना चाहिए 50%, but we have kept it 45%. और होता क्या generally by first half means 30th September, generally by October government reaches 80%, 90% of the limit. And why is this so? Because government's tax receipts are backloaded. बाद में टैक्स ज्यादा आता है. एक फाइनेंशियल ईयर के एंड में टैक्स कलेक्शन इज मोर, स्टार्टिंग में टैक्स कलेक्शन इज लेस. स्टार्टिंग में एक्सपेंडिचर ज्यादा होता है एंड टैक्स कलेक्शन बाद में आता है. सो स्टार्टिंग में शॉर्टफॉल इज मोर. फॉर एग्जाम्पल बाई जनवरी वी हैड रीच्ड 110%. मतलब इस समय ज्यादा बोरो कर लिया. बट इन फेब वी आर गोइंग टू गेट अ लॉट ऑफ टैक्सेस, सो वी विल मीट दिस टारगेट. नाउ एनके सिंह कमिटी क्या हुआ बताओ. किसका रीजन?
टैक्स कलेक्शन बाद में होता है, तो वही एक्सपेंडिचर ज्यादा होता है, बाद में टैक्स लेकर ऐसे किस तरह से खरीद का टाइम चलता है, इसलिए
किसका टाइम चलता है? अरे मैं गवर्नमेंट की बात कर रहा हूँ, फार्मर की बात थोड़ी कर रहा हूँ कि खरीद. So 2 years back we appointed NK Singh committee to look into this FRBM targets. They gave certain suggestions. I will just be telling you the suggestion which government has accepted. So fiscal deficit suggestion, NK Singh committee gave that we should be keeping a band 2.5% plus minus 0.5%, which government didn't accept. NK Singh committee said that rather than exact 3%, we should try to keep it 2.5 plus minus 0.5%. We didn't accept. The second suggestion which NK Singh committee gave regarding fiscal management is central government debt, state government debt, general debt 2015-16, 2000. We are trying to reduce it to 40%, 20%, 60%. Right now it is 45. मैंने एग्जैक्ट लिखा हुआ है सर 22 और 23%. ये आप एग्जैक्ट वैल्यू देख लें. दिस इज राइट. वो नए वाले एडिशन में मैंने राइट नाउ अभी 17-18 में इट इज अराउंड 46-47%. So we are trying to reduce it. ये टारगेट आप ध्यान रखना. ये तो चेंज है हो रहा है, बट दिस इज जनरल डेट मीन्स सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड स्टेट गवर्नमेंट कंबाइंड. ठीक है. टू 2017-18 what is the debt written है लिखा होगा कहीं कितना परसेंट? 46.5%. 17-18 46 इंक्रीज हो गया 46.5%. ठीक है. ऑफ जीडीपी. जीडीपी कितना था? 168 लाख करोड़. कितना आ रहा कैलकुलेट करके जरा बताओ तो. 46.5% ऑफ 188 लाख करोड़. 168 लाख करोड़. 168 लाख करोड़ कितना रहा अप्रोक्सीमेटली? 46.5% ऑफ 168 78.1 ना. वही उसमें डेटा में लिखा हुआ 82 लाख करोड़. आपके पास नई बुक है पुरानी बुक है? कोई बात नहीं, छोड़ो। इकोनॉमी में इतना चेंज होता है ना कि नया अपडेटेड तो पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा। आई सेड ना कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का डेट स्टॉक कितना मैंने बताया था, 82 लाख करोड़। तो दिस 46.5% आर अराउंड 80 लाख करोड़। ठीक है, हमने आरबीआई का इश्यूज तो डिस्कस कर दिया था ना आप लोग के बैच में। पहले नो बोलते हो फिर सोचते हो कि डिस्कस किया था नहीं किया था। टसल बिटवीन आरबीआई एंड गवर्नमेंट डिस्कस किया नहीं किया? देखो एक सेकंड, आईबीसी कोड सरफेस ये तो अभी डिस्कस करना है, ठीक है, दैट आई नो, हम लोग बाद में करेंगे। टसल बिटवीन आरबीआई एंड मैनेजमेंट, वही है इशू, ब्रीफ में है, क्या मतलब है? अच्छा, मैंने बता दें कि 21 सेंट्रल बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स, उसमें गवर्नर एंड डिप्टी गवर्नर। अच्छा, क्या आप मिस कर दिए हो? आप लोग का एक क्लास छूटा, दैट आई नो, वो हम कवर कर देंगे, बट दैट वी हैव डिस्कस। आरबीआई का टसल ठीक है, वी विल डिस्कस, हम लोग कर देंगे डिस्कशन। और जो आरबीआई का टसल है नाउ, वो 20 मिनट का वीडियो यूट्यूब पे है, तो वो भी आप एक बार देख सकते हो, एंड देन आई विल एक्सप्लेन। वो यूट्यूब पे फ्री है, कल हमने डाला है। कितने लोगों ने देखा? किसी ने नहीं देखा? हाँ, जो आरबीआई का टसल है, ठीक है, वो देखना, कल हमने अपना वीडियो पोस्ट किया है, क्यूपी वाला, एक बार देख लेना, मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन जरूर कर दूंगा। हाँ, कैपिटल रिजर्व, कैपिटल रिजर्व, देखो वो आरबीआई की बैलेंस शीट और रिवैल्यूएशन ऑफ रिजर्व और कैपिटल, ये आपको तब तक नहीं समझ में आएगा अनटिल अनलेस यू अंडरस्टैंड द अकाउंटिंग थिंग्स, और वो आपको एज पर योर सिलेबस जानने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है दूर दूर तक। आरबीआई का जो इशू है दैट आई विल डिस्कस इन डिटेल, वो हम डिस्कस कर देंगे, बट जो कैपिटल रखता है आरबीआई कीप्स, चलो ये आपको जब आरबीआई का इशू डिस्कस करेंगे देन ओनली आई विल डिस्कस दिस। हाँ, अच्छा किया बता दिए, हिंदू में हर वो चीज जो आ रही हो आपके लिए रेलिवेंट नहीं है, इस बात का हमेशा ध्यान रखें। क्या हिंदू कोई ऑफिशियल हुआ है क्या कि आ गया तो वो चीज आना ही चाहिए? हिंदू में अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स कम विच इज नॉट एट ऑल रेलिवेंट फॉर योर सिलेबस। क्या किया जाए उसका? नहीं पूछेंगे, ठीक है। देयर आर लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स से रिलेटेड बहुत सारी चीजें आती हैं, दैट विल नेवर बी आस्क्ड टू यू। सो डोंट थिंक कि हिंदू में आया तो आपको पता ही होना चाहिए, ऐसा कहीं भी कुछ नहीं लिखा। इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में कोई चीज आ गया तो आपको पता ही होना चाहिए, ऐसा एकदम नहीं है, ऐसा एकदम नहीं है, आप ध्यान रखना। हाँ, एंजल देखो, यू रिक्वायर योर नॉलेज टिल अ सर्टेन लेवल, उसके बियॉन्ड आपको यूपीएससी नहीं पूछ सकता। एंड सपोज समटाइम्स दे आस्क दैट क्वेश्चन, लीव दैट क्वेश्चन, आप हर चीज नहीं कर सकते इस लेवल के नॉलेज पे, समझ गए? हिंदू में कुछ भी आ गया तो आपको पता होना चाहिए। अब उसमें अगर माइक्रो इकोनॉमी की थियरीज लगी हुई, हाउ विल यू अंडरस्टैंड? हाउ विल यू अंडरस्टैंड? हाँ तो ठीक है, फिर ऑप्शनल ले लो या ग्रेजुएशन कर लो, फिर आई विल एक्सप्लेन। सो यू मस्ट स्टिक टू योर सिलेबस, कि क्या सिलेबस में कितना जनरल स्टडीज इकोनॉमी में किस लेवल तक पढ़ना, दैट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड, ठीक है? मजाक के मोड में लग रहे हो आप लोग। टैक्स,
So sometimes I think that it is also not relevant to us, but we will become.
कौन सा टैक्स? हाँ, तो अगर आपको कभी डाउट होता है कि ये चीज पढ़ना चाहिए, रेलिवेंट नहीं, तो प्लीज कम टू मी, आई विल टेल यू, क्योंकि ये डाउट होगा, ठीक है, कि क्या चीज पढ़े या नहीं पढ़े। विथ एक्सपीरियंस आपको भी समझ में आ जाएगा, ठीक है। इफ यू सी द 5-6 years क्वेश्चन पेपर, तो आपको एक ब्रीफ आइडिया लग जाता है कि टिल व्हाट लेवल यू शुड नो, टिल व्हाट लेवल योर नॉलेज शुड बी देयर टू आंसर द यूपीएससी क्वेश्चन। एंड बी रेडी दैट एक आध क्वेश्चन हमेशा ऐसा होगा, इट विल बी सो कॉम्प्लेक्स और इंट्रिकेट कि आपको नहीं सॉल्व कर सकते आपके नॉलेज लेवल, बट डोंट ट्राई टू चेज दैट क्वेश्चन। उस एक क्वेश्चन को आप दोबारा, कभी हो सकता है कि अगले साल कुछ और ऐसा एक आ जाए, ठीक है। तो जो 90-95% आपको जो सिलेबस है दैट यू ट्राई टू कवर, एक क्वेश्चन जो हर साल एक ऐसा आता है, ट्राई टू लीव दैट क्वेश्चन, क्योंकि उसको फॉलो करने के लिए विल हैव टू स्टडी 1 year इकोनॉमी, एंड देन आल्सो विल नॉट बी श्योर कि वेदर विल बी एबल टू डू इट और नॉट। टैक्स और हिंदू या इकोनॉमिक्स बारे में कोई भी चीज आई है, दैट डजंट मीन दैट यू शुड नो इट, ये ध्यान रखना। टैक्स, taxes can be classified in different ways, of, किसी का इकोनॉमिक्स ऑप्शनल है इसमें?
No.
Direct tax and indirect tax. Direct tax and indirect tax. What is the difference? See, in case of tax, there is a term called tax burden. So when I purchase this marker, I paid tax from my pocket. So tax burden is on me. But if this tax amount doesn't go into the government's account, who is responsible? The company from which I purchased this. So the responsibility of payment is on the company and the tax burden is on me. When I am earning income, I need to pay tax. In that case, burden is on me and the responsibility of payment of tax is also on me. So direct tax may, in case of direct tax, the tax burden, in case of direct tax, the tax burden, in case of direct tax, the tax burden and responsibility of payment of tax. In case of direct tax, tax burden and responsibility of payment of tax lies on the same entity. Lies on the same entity. और indirect tax में लिख लो. In case of indirect tax, lies on the same entity. In case of indirect tax, responsibility of payment of tax is on different entity. Responsibility of payment of tax is on different entity and tax burden is on different entity. ठीक है, समझ गए? Now second way of classification is progressive, proportional and regressive. Progressive में you write progressive, tax percentage increases, tax percentage increase, progressive tax percentage increases with increase in income. Tax percentage increases with increase in income. ठीक है? Proportional, tax percentage remains same tax percentage remains same irrespective of income. Tax percentage remains same irrespective of income. And regressive tax percentage decreases with increase in income. Regressive tax percentage decreases with increase in income. ठीक है, इसका एग्जाम्पल हम लोग अभी डिस्कस कर ले. प्रोग्रेसिव टैक्स, पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स, प्रोपोर्शनल टैक्स नहीं. अभी हम लोग इसका एग्जाम्पल समझेंगे. विल टेक प्रॉपर एग्जाम्पल्स. थर्ड वे ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन इज ad valorem. Ad valorem and specific tax. Ad valorem and specific tax. Ad valorem में you write ad valorem, tax is based on value. Tax is based on value. Tax is based on value. Specific tax, tax is based on unit. Specific tax, tax is based on unit. Unit. अब देखो इसका समझो. Ad valorem. See, when I purchase this marker, so I paid tax. So government imposes tax on this marker. What does the rule say? कि ₹5 per marker tax or 5% of the marker price? Percent. So in tax is being imposed on marker in terms of its value, not in terms of quantity or unit. ठीक है? So when you are purchasing anything, tax is expressed in terms of percentage value of the product, not per product as such. So ad valorem means value based tax. Specific tax means tax is based on unit. That means India में generally almost all taxes are ad valorem taxes. We impose tax on value. Specific tax नहीं as such. यूनिट पे पे करते हो. यूनिट पे नहीं पे करते. यूनिट का जो प्राइस होता है ना, उस पे पे करते. ठीक है, वैल्यू बेस्ड टैक्स दैट विल कम. दैट्स व्हाई आई सेड ऑलमोस्ट ऑल टैक्सेस. सो मोस्ट ऑफ द टैक्सेस आर एड वैलोरम टैक्स. स्पेसिफिक टैक्सेस नहीं है. एंड अच्छा, बाय द वे, गवर्नमेंट्स टैक्स कलेक्शन in India mainly depends on government of India's question है. Government of India's revenue tax collection revenue mainly depends on nominal GDP और real GDP. एक ही ऑप्शन हो सकता है. Government's tax revenue collection depends on why nominal should also be included. In India, tax collection mainly depends on nominal GDP because our taxation system is ad valorem. We have value based taxes. If we had specific taxes, then our tax collection would have been dependent on real GDP, but our tax collection is, tax levy is basically value added tax. ठीक है, ad valorem tax है. So that is why our tax collection depends on nominal GDP. ठीक है. origin of production based tax and destination of consumption based tax. क्या हुआ? This tax you will understand when we will be taking an example. Origin of production based tax means tax is imposed where the production is happening, and here tax is imposed where the product is being consumed. ठीक है? Tax is imposed where the production is happening, where is the origin of the product, and this tax is imposed where the consumption of the product is happening. We will take a detailed example to understand this. Now I am going to draw this diagram which was into effect till 30th June 2017. After that GST came. So what was the situation before GST? Let's discuss first, and then whatever changed after GST, that you'll understand. So tax direct, indirect. Direct, we have center, state, personal income tax, corporate income tax, minimum alternate tax, dividend distribution tax, capital gain tax, securities transaction tax, then land revenue property tax. states में आता। ठीक है, let's understand one by one. Now personal income tax, suppose your income is total income 15 lakhs. Now when you do certain saving, certain types of, then government gives exemptions till 1.5 lakhs. पता नहीं तो LIC, certain mutual funds. So suppose you claimed exemptions. You claimed exemptions 1.5 lakhs. Now from last year government is again giving you rebate, extra rebate, standard deduction. Earlier you used to submit your medical bills and travel details. Now government is giving you, government said that don't submit the bills, we will be giving exemptions to everyone, those who are earning salary, 50,000. So government gives some extra rebate of 50,000, that is called standard deduction. .5 lakhs for salaried employee, not for me. Not for me here. Businessman मतलब? तो बिजनेस का अलग है, बिजनेस के लिए तो दिस कॉर्पोरेट इनकम टैक्स है. सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय जैसे कंसल्टेंट्स पे इट मे नॉट बी. सो स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन, ऑल सैलरीड एम्प्लॉयज विल गेट एक्स्ट्रा एग्जम्पशन ऑफ 50,000. So now taxable income, on which income tax will be imposed? 13 lakhs. 15 minus this is 13 lakhs. ठीक है. So now on 13 lakhs, 0 to 2.5, 0 to 5 lakhs now, it is 0%. ठीक है. 5 to, so 0% is 5 to 10 lakh, 20%, and above 10 lakh, 30%. So above 10 lakhs, what is the income? 3 lakh. जीरो से देखो, देर इज अ कंफ्यूजन इन दिस नेक्स्ट ईयर्स बजट कि हाउ इट विल बी implemented, there is some level of confusion. So let me tell you the last year's this slab. If we will consider the last or this year income, suppose this is the income for this year. So how it is calculated? 0 to 2.5 lakhs, 0%, 2.5 to 5 lakh. तो it is 2.5 lakhs. 2.5 lakhs पे कितना परसेंट? 5%. It will come 12,500. समझ रहे हो ये? Then 5 lakh to 10 lakh, 20%. It will come 1 lakh. Above 10 lakh, 3 lakh to 30%. 90,000. So your total tax will be this will be total tax. समझ गए? And if you are earning interest on your deposits, then that interest income in 1 year should also be added here, and this same formula will be applied. 2 lakhs? ठीक. If you are earning, so whatever are other sources, that should also be included here, and then this formula should be applied. If you have a flat in Old Rajendra Nagar and you are getting rentals 2 lakh rupees, that 2 lakh should be added here, and then 17 lakh, this formula should be applied. And that is why here in Old Rajendra Nagar, the owners take in cash, because if they will take into account, their taxable income will increase.
We should bear in account.
Beggars can't be choosers.
We can.
वो बोलेंगे ठीक है रहने दो आप, किसी और को ले आते हैं. डिमांड एंड सप्लाई का मिसमैच है ना.
So you should have power.
I should have a lot of things. मैं imagine करता रहता हूँ. So this is regarding personal income tax. किसको किसको नहीं समझ में आया? तो शर्मा क्या रहे थे पहले? अभी क्लास के बाहर मिलोगे आप. Total income 15 lakhs. Government gave these two exemptions. So taxable income, that means on this income tax will be imposed. Now from the bottom see here, 0 to 2.5 lakh, 0%. 2.5 out of 13, this taxable income. On this tax will be imposed. This form. You got it? समझ गए? हाँ? अब मैंने ऐसा क्या बोल दिया? You do certain savings, LIC, mutual fund, fixed deposit, under various exemptions. Government gives exemptions.
Sir, in case of 5 lakh to 10 lakh, why are you taking the upper limit and lower limit as 10 lakh and 5 lakh? I mean, you need to consider the interest, that percentage for the entire 10 lakh.
20%.
Why are you taking 20% of 5 lakh?
This is the formula. So 0 to 2.5,
You gave the example.
0%. 2.5 to 5, 5%. 5% on what? 5% on the income lying in between. So 5% on 2.5 lakhs. 20% on 5 lakhs.
Logic, what is the
This is very simple logic.
Sir, I'm not getting the upper limit and lower limit. I'm not saying that.
So you are saying that if the income is, so you are saying that this 20% should be on all the amount. No, it never happens like this. It will 20%. That means everyone will prefer to have 4.9 lakh income rather than 5.1 lakh income. ऐसा थोड़ी logic work करता है. If this will be the case, if someone earning 5.1 lakh, he will be paying much more tax and he will be getting less disposable income as compared to the person having 4.9 lakh.
That boundary value, that.
सर जो exemption है 1.5 लाख वो परसेंटेज के टर्म्स में है ना
नहीं 1.5 lakhs है ना. Absolute value, you can invest 1.5 lakhs in certain instruments which government has given.
चाहे हमारा 2.5 लाख से 5 लाख
देखो इससे सुनो इससे कोई मतलब नहीं है. You do investments and that amount will be deducted from your total income. Now your taxable income is this. This formula is applied on this taxable income.
So can you say that 15?
एक से हाँ.
फॉर एग्जांपल आवर अर्निंग इज 3 लाख एनुअल अर्निंग इज 3
So your earning is 3 lakh. Did you invest this? Did you do that or not? Yes. बताओ. वही तो बोल रहे हैं किए. So 3 lakhs of total income you invested in certain instruments. So exemptions is 1.5 lakh, standard deduction 0.5 lakh. Your taxable income is 1 lakh. Now taxable income is 1 lakh, 0 to 2.5, 0%, no tax.
So and is this a 10% of 15 lakh or it is like fixed amount of 1.5 lakhs?
10% of
Exemptions.
exemptions are absolute value 1.5 lakh. Oh, you are getting confused with this. It's absolute value 1.5 lakhs.
सर ये आपने एग्जांपल
ठीक है. I didn't realize that you will get confused in 50 and 1.5. अभी समझ गए? I just changed value. They were thinking that this 1.5 is 10% of this. No, 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 no. It is absolute exemption. कोई भी ले सकता है. Anyone. Anyone. So you do certain types of savings and you get exemptions. If you will not do, you will not get exemption. कहाँ मिलता है? 1.5 लाख पैसा दो, मैं बताता हूँ कैसे मिलता है. अरे you do LIC में मिलता है, म्यूचुअल फंड में मिलता है, FD में मिलता है. Maximum exemption is 1.5 lakhs. Maximum exemption is 1.5 lakhs.
But if someone is earning like 50 lakh or 60 lakh rupees per annum and he is getting 1.5 lakh exemption,
Huh? He will get?
is this fair?
Yes, it is fair. Clear है?
His LIC policies will be LECT-12, maybe 5-6 lakhs or something.
Doesn't matter. Maximum exemption is 1.5. आज यही ब्रेक करना है और पढ़ना है. कल करना है. ठीक है. So we'll start from here. ठीक है. ये पूरा लिखना मेरा बेकार हो गया. और I will not be again drawing this diagram. मुझे तो याद ही है. I will keep on explaining. ठीक है. अच्छा.